Now we're going to get down to the nitty-gritty of what Indians are all about.
I still say we Indian people are believers in the truth. This is the way of life that was given to your people. You're born an Indian, you're going to die an Indian. Indianness is a good life. You're facing an Indian this afternoon.
This week on Muskogee Vision, we bring you the sights and sounds of spring at Hagee Creek Park in Broken Arrow. Hagee Creek Park is located at the corner of 121st and Garnett and is a great place for a nature walk or a round of horseshoes. Right after these brief messages, we'll have Oklahoma Secretary of Native American Affairs Lisa Billy speaking with Gary Fife on Muskogee Radio. Mado, and thanks for watching Muskogee Vision.
The way we present ourselves sends a message.
It can be the loudest voice you have.
Let your song ring out. We are still here.
Remind the world of your ancestors. Make them never forget the resiliency of Native people.
These are threads.
These are threads.
These are threads.
These are threads for the tread you make.
Hey guys, it's your Muskogee Vision Community Calendar. National Crime Victims' Rights Week. Have you lost a loved one as a result of a violent crime? An honor tree will be displayed in the Solomon McCombs Building April 7th to the 13th. For more information, please call the Family Violence Prevention Program at 918-732-7979. Dodgeball Tournament. Entry fee is $25, is for Muskogee Creek Nation employees only. 8-player roster, 10 max, 2 females on the roster. It will be April 23rd and 25th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Muskogee Creek Nation Muskogee Dome. Donations are needed for the Native Americans of the Pine Ridge Reservation. They will be accepted until close of business on Monday, April the 8th. Items that are needed are shovels, rakes, gloves, safety glasses, diapers, baby wipes, Enfamil. These donations may be dropped off at the Muskogee Creek Nation Light Horse Police Department located on the MCN Tribal Complex. There will be a hiring event May 7th from 10 to 2 p.m. at the River Spirit Event Center. Address is 8330 South Riverside Parkway in Tulsa. Over 150 positions available. There will be on-site interviews. Honoring Maxine Wildcat Barnett, Tuesday, April 16th at 6 p.m. at the Glenpool Conference Center, 12205 South Yukon Avenue in Glenpool. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you at some of these great events.
Join us for the 47th Annual Symposium on the American Indian, April 8th through the 13th, on the NSU Tahlequah campus. Gain new perspectives from our outstanding film series and keynote speakers, featuring Tara Hauska, Aaron Griffin, Mary Jo Tippeconic Fox, and Matriarch. Engage in a variety of cultural activities, including the NSU Powwow. For more information, visit www.nsuok.edu/symposium.
Welcome back to Muskogee Radio here on The Brew in beautiful downtown Okmulgee. I'm Gary Fife, Jehoe-Difkinos. Our guest here in the studio now is the Secretary of Native American Affairs, appointed by our Governor Kevin Stitt. First of all, Ms. Billy, thank you for making time and cruising over here to Okmulgee.
Absolutely, my pleasure. It was a beautiful drive.
Oh gosh, I guess so. Keep driving. End up somewhere north. Well, you don't want to go north right now, with snowstorms and things. But you have taken on an incredible task of Secretary of Native American Affairs, and it's got to be quite I don't know, imposing kind of thing to take on. Many people should know you from what they call the Chickasaw TV commercials, the ones you do on the historical progress of the Chickasaw Nation. Now you're coming from years in the Oklahoma legislature and in your own tribal legislature. That's quite a pedigree there, plus the degrees and things that you've gotten, the endorsements from the other tribes. So, first of all, what's your first thought when I guess we talk about a Secretary of Native American Affairs? Is it really imposing? Is it scary?
Well, I would say probably all of that. It's a daunting. When I think about it, it's going to require a lot of prayer, and I believe that the Lord will give us a lot of creativity because our tribal people, this is our land, and we should very much have a voice in governing what happens in the state of Oklahoma. And so for our current governor, Kevin Stitt, to have the foresight and the vision to do that, to me it's very spiritual and it's very exciting, but yes, very daunting.
No, I can imagine. Now, you mentioned faith in the website as being a very strong component in your life. And from what I'm hearing, it's primarily Christian, is it?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
That's fine. So where does Native cultural practice fit into that?
Well, I believe that God created us as spiritual beings, and certainly my husband and I, it's always been that way for us. So there was never a conflict. I actually shake shells, and my husband and I are very active at our church in Indian ministries as well, and I have a small group called Nations United, and all different tribes. And we do a lot of work in our Indian communities and on the homeless as well on the streets. So for us, that hasn't been a conflict. I know within Native communities sometimes that can sometimes be a conflict, but ultimately all of us as Native people are very spiritual people and very, very honorable and respecting of that.
Oklahoma has been known in the past as the home of the red man, and more recently Native America was on the tags. But it's been my experience there are Oklahomans that don't really share that thought. And some of them can be quite vocal or, let's say, strong in that, in that feeling. So, to me it was saying, well, we still got an educational process to go. A lot of folks don't understand that the relationship between Native American people and tribes and the government is a political one, and it's not a racial thing. Obviously the race is there, but they made deals between governments. And how would you then take a task like that and incorporate it into your agenda?
Well, something that I always keep in my thoughts is that, because I have had people ask me, what is sovereignty and why do tribes have a special status? And I always remind them, when the founding fathers and mothers of this country, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, those people who did the writing, because we know as Indian people, we were also a part of that process, a very, very important part of that process, but we didn't sit and do the writing. They wrote us into that U.S. Constitution. They saw the importance of making sure the indigenous people had a voice at the table. That's where our sovereignty comes from. And so when we keep that in our forethoughts, then we're able to move forward from there. And so it is a political relationship. It is a government-to-government relationship. So I'm very grateful for that, because if you look at other continents, that was not always the case for the smaller number of people, not smaller in stature or smaller in courage, but smaller in numbers. And so here in America, our forefathers saw the value of that and the importance of that, because our people are warriors. We help fight for this country. In fact, in our military, we continue to be the highest number of people serving in our U.S. military. I have two sons that serve currently. One's flies Blackhawks, and one's in the infantry. We as Native people have always been warriors. Even when we couldn't be citizens of this great country that we live in, So it is our obligation to continue that voice and to move that progress forward on behalf of our ancestors who truly fought and died so that you and I could sit here and have the freedoms that we have, and to have the freedoms to speak our language. And a few years ago, I authored legislation and was able to get it supported. I'm so grateful for my Senate counterpart at the time, Senator Gary Stanislawski from Tulsa, because he carried it in the Senate for me. He's non-Indian. But we were able to set tribal language as official world language so that if in our communities you wanted to learn Muskogee Creek language or the Choctaw or Chickasaw language or Cherokee language, you could learn that, and that would be for your past objectives for our Oklahoma curriculum. And I remember when that happened and when it passed, for me it was very significant. For probably most legislators, it was, oh, another bill was passed. But for me it was very significant because of my husband's family, because of my own family. That language was taken from them in boarding schools, whether at Wheelock, Wyandotte, at Chilocco. That language had been removed from them. And so for us to come back and to say, we can speak our language, and we can speak our language in public. I get on to my children in our language. That's always been the best for me, and being in Walmart when they're getting out of hand. And so we have the right to set that forward as Native people, as Indian people. And I think it's important that we help to work together, because we're all Oklahomans. I drove down the same highway as everyone else. We work and live together, and I think when we do that in unity, we will see a lot more success for our state.
Well, let's turn to the political arena for a bit. Now, you, I guess, for me, have been the third person to occupy such a comparable spot in a gubernatorial candidate or administration. And I have to say, I don't mean to be too harsh, but your two predecessors didn't show as much. And when I say that, I'm not aware of any initiatives or statements or things like that really push the tribal agenda or something like that. Do you follow me there?
I do. Yeah. And I have to say, both of those individuals are friends of mine. I had the opportunity to serve with Chris Binge in the House. Jackie Secondine Hensley's a friend of mine, the former Kaw Nation chairwoman there for her tribe. And so I think a lot of times it may have more to do with Governor Stitt has basically said, go make it happen. Go make it happen, Lisa. And so there is a lot of freedom in that. And Governor Stitt is such a out-of-the-box thinker. He's a successful businessman. He's also a Cherokee citizen. And so I think all of that comes into play in terms of let's really make Oklahoma the top 10. That's the mantra. Let's turn this thing around. Let's make Oklahoma the top 10. Well, the tribes that exist in Oklahoma, we're not leaving to other states for better tax incentives. We're not going to California or Montana because they offered us a piece of land to build a building on. We're here. This is where tribal lands are. And so if we can sort of harness that and make that happen, then we win. But I think keeping in my mind as a cabinet secretary, and Governor Stitt reminds us continually in our meetings, top 10, top 10, top 10. You say it, you speak it, you live it. And so in order to do that, you have to make things happen. We don't get to just sit around and drink coffee in our cabinet meeting. I wish we would. He only gives us a bottle of water. I need coffee now. Yeah. He really expects us to make some things happen. And so, in fact, he has told each cabinet secretary, you list your goals. And we do it on a dashboard in our meetings, and so everybody else knows everybody else's goals. What's your goals? What's your quick wins for this state, for this administration, and how can we make that happen? What's your timeline? And so, in a sense, he's pushing us. He's like that old basketball coach I had in high school. He's trying to get us to where we need to go, but it's not always comfortable getting there because I might just want to sit back and drink that cup of coffee. And he's like, oh no, we got to go. We got to keep moving it.
Well, in reference to your predecessors there, what I was looking at, and I'd met them both and talked with them both, they're very wonderful people. I was always curious as to whether there was gubernatorial pressure, perhaps, or no initiatives were coming forward. But the bottom end is, we really didn't hear anything from them. But now you've assumed a position that's been pretty much elevated.
Absolutely.
From liaison now to secretary within the governor's cabinet.
Absolutely.
So what initiatives or priorities or plans do you bring?
And I think you really hit on it, Gary. Because it is a cabinet position, there's been given more place of influence and authority, and that's certainly not anything that the predecessors could have controlled. We have to all start somewhere. And so we start somewhere, and I hope 10 years from now, whoever is serving in this position may look back on me and go, man, that Lisa Billy, she didn't do anything. I'm going to do something great. I hope that happens, because if we'll continue that sort of progressive momentum, it will happen. So right now, currently what I'm doing is I'm meeting with every leader in the state. Of course, if they don't want to meet with me, I can't force them, but that's my goal. I'm making visits, and I'm probably about a third of the way there. I look forward to meeting with Chief Floyd later today, but I'm meeting with every tribe, and what I really want to know is, what do they want? What do they want? What do our tribal leaders expect from the government, from the state of Oklahoma? And I'm writing it all down. I have to put it all together so I can present that to Governor Stitt. And what's interesting is I've had so many tribal leaders say to me, what does Governor Stitt expect of us? What is he hoping? What is he wanting? And when I shared that back with Governor Stitt, he went, I like that. I've not heard that yet. And so that's the first initial process, is I want to meet with every tribe. And wouldn't it be wonderful if, let's say, we could have maybe a cabinet meeting at one of our tribal complexes? Wouldn't it be wonderful to take the governor of the state and go tour Muskogee Creek Nation land and see what is happening in this area right here in the state of Oklahoma, and to go all over, to go to Cheyenne country, go to Choctaw country, go to every part way up north and see the Cherokees, because I think the more that you go out and you see what's happening and you see the beauty. To me, when I think of our Indian people, my grandmother was a quilt maker. And her quilts came from all these different fabrics. My family on both sides, of course, were very poor. My dad always jokes, though, and says, he goes, living on a dirt floor was no big deal. You just sprinkled it with water and stomped on it. It was fun. I enjoyed it. So I'm like, okay, Dad. But my grandmother eventually was able to get out of the cotton fields. And when she went to work at the old TG&Y. My mom's family's all from Anadarko. And in that, she was able to take the scrap fabrics. They would throw them away, but my grandmother would keep them. And she had all mismatched curtains all throughout the house, but she was glad to have curtains. Didn't matter that they didn't match, but they would throw out all the displays. They would throw out all the extra fabrics when people would purchase fabric. She took those fabrics and she turned it into beautiful quilts that I have in my home, my brother has in his home. And so they're beautiful because she made them, and she has all these designs. If that were one piece of fabric, how boring would that be?
Now, mentioning that, I instantly thought, well, gosh, now they would be works of art.
Absolutely.
They should be on, hung on the walls of the Gilcrease.
Absolutely.
Like
and our Indian people, we've come from abject poverty, assimilation, genocide. We have overcome all these horrible atrocities that some wanted to see us die, collapse, our tribal governments completely fold in. We're still relatively new governments in terms of being able to vote for our own leaders of our tribes instead of a president of the United States appointing and telling us as tribal citizens who will be our leader. And so it reminds me of my grandma's quilts in that she took all these things that were throwaways, as we had been seen in the eyes of many people, and she created a piece of art. I'm going to remember that, Gary, a piece of art that should be hung at the Gilcrease Museum. And that's who we are as Native people. And I believe because we take a rightful role in Oklahoma politics, our state will be a top 10.
Now, we asked you about your priorities before the break there. Now, let's revisit that question. Are there any particular subjects in mind that you feel like you want to tackle?
Well, currently we have potential compact negotiations that a lot of tribes are looking at. And so that's very important because that's our economy. That's our base. And that's what our economy for our tribes, because we don't tax our citizens, very important that we have a strong economic base because that's what builds our programs that we have. And those programs then, because we're tribal governments, we also are able to access federal funds that come into our state to help build our roads and highways that we would not have access to if tribes were not here. And I think a lot of times people don't always understand that. The average citizen, they may not always understand the flow of dollars and how that happens and how important that is. And so I've heard that as I've traveled so far just with a handful of tribes I've met with. Compact negotiations will probably be a part of that, at least for some of our tribes, as we move forward.
Okay, now let me shift to something that might be a little more off the wall. Most people would know you from the TV spots that you do, the promotional things for the Chickasaw Nation. And I've been watching those for a while and noticing other things that are happening around the country and the expansion, growth, rise, I don't know, of the role of Native American women. Now we've got 2 in Congress and some in state legislatures around the country. Now, do you feel like you will be carrying part of that load now that you are the first Native American woman in a cabinet like this?
I do, absolutely. And again, that's humbling, but it's a very huge responsibility as we move forward. And when I originally ran for the House of Representatives in 2004 from McLean County, there had not been a woman or Native American ever elected. And so I was the first to do that, and I really always, my mother reminded me, my late mother reminded me, you serve the people. This is not about who you are, this is about the people who believed enough in you to elect you. And I remember going into my 2008 campaign, I drew an opponent from the opposite party. And I remember opening my local hometown newspaper. Now, my town's not very large, about 5,000 in Purcell, and there's a half-page ad with this canoe and a stick figure of an Indian woman with this dumb-looking feather that says, "Do you trust this Indian to run your state government?" And on there listed 2 or 3 tribes that had supported me financially, had given me money. And I was so humiliated. I was so embarrassed. I did not want to leave. And my husband and I, we live out in the country on a little farm. I was raised in Bristow, east of Bristow, on a small farm. And so farming and being with animals has always been my life. And I just thought, I'm never going to leave the farm. I'm going to stay here forever. And I remember my pastor calling me. And he said, "Are you going to be at church tonight?" It was a Wednesday. The paper comes out on Wednesdays in Purcell. And I went, "Are you kidding me? I'm not leaving my house." He said, "I think you're going to have to. You're in the middle of a re-election. You have to keep knocking doors." And I said, "Have you not seen the paper, Pastor Sam?" And he said, "Yeah, I saw the paper. What of it?" And I said, "Really? You know what he put about me?" And he goes, "Hey, he spelled your name right." He goes, "And by the way," and he was non-Indian, he said, "By the way, is that all the money the tribes have given you? I would think every tribe in the state should be maxing out to you. That should be embarrassing. Every tribe should be giving money to you." And I went, "That's all you're seeing in that?" And he said, "Absolutely." And he said, "It also shows the character of your opponent. Now, get to church. We'll see you in a little bit."
Yeah, unfortunately.
And I went, oh, wow. And I am reminded how important it is that when we face criticism, it's our character that will come out in terms of how we handle that criticism and how we move forward. And so, yes, it's a great responsibility for all of us as Native people to do that. And I think it's important that we do so that we can continue to build relations. People are afraid of what they don't know or understand. And so we just have to continue to work together and praying, certainly, as we move forward.
Got to have powers that be behind you.
Absolutely. By the way, I won that re-election.
Well, we've still seen stuff like that, come out. So it reminds us we still have quite a challenge in educating our neighbors. And we're still trying, folks.
Yes,
if you're
we
listening,
are.
Don't get too angry. If you do, get mad at me. Now, we have I guess a few minutes left. Now, as I've alluded to a couple of times, and people know you from the TV spots. Now, has that affected you? You know, when you walk down the street and people say, hey, you're that...
Yes, it affects me most when I'm at like my kids' ball games. I can't get mad and yell at people anymore. Yes, people do recognize me, and it really does make me aware of my surroundings to make sure that I am acting nice and as best as I can. Sometimes I get a temper like my dad. My dad's Chickasaw, and I get a temper like my daddy, but yes, absolutely. But on the other hand, it gives me great opportunity, and this is what I've learned through the process, because those history spots were not my idea. In fact, I did not want to do them, did not feel qualified. I'd never been behind a camera set in my entire life, but Governor Anatubby really believed that I needed to start sharing our stories, and that was sort of the beginning of what you see now, Chickasaw.tv. But it is a reminder that everywhere we go, we represent Indian people. And people don't look at us and go, oh, well, that would be the Choctaws or the Chickasaws or the Muskogee Creeks. They just see us as Indians. They don't see us as specific tribes. And so all of us represent our tribal nations everywhere we go. And for good or for not good, it's what God has given to us to carry, and I think we can take a great advantage of that.
I absolutely agree with you, and slip in on one of my own stories here. That happened to me once when my wife and I were on our hunting when we went to the Eagle Preserve in Haines, Alaska. And we got there at night, and we're looking for a good camping spot, and I noticed one of the park rangers, and I walked over and he said, hey, can you help us out here? And, where can we set up our tent? And he kind of looked at me and says, if I just say that again, I said, well, where can we set up our tent? And I'm thinking, oh, geez, now what do I need? He said, aren't you that guy on the radio? Oh, really? Exactly the way I reacted. And I thought, oh, my God, in the middle of the woods in Alaska, this guy picked me up. So we do sort of have to carry the flag all the time. Yes. Any final thought real quick?
I'm excited about the opportunity, and I just want to encourage all of our tribal leaders and tribal citizens, when you see me or send me an email or call me, reach out to me and let me know what your thoughts and ideas are as we move forward. This will be a short season in my life in terms of serving. I hope to help create it. I hope the next person that comes along will make it even better.
Muskogee Media would like to thank Lisa Billy for coming down to the capital city for an in-studio interview, as well as all of you out there that watched today's program. Lisa Billy's interview was edited for time, but if you would like to view the complete interview, visit our YouTube channel. Just head on over to youtube.com and search Muskogee, that's MVSKOKE Vision, all one word, and while you're there, subscribe for updates. As we sign off today, we leave you with the sights and sounds of Hague Creek Park, and remember, Mado means thank you, and Hadum Jihijathis means see you later.